Good morning, class. So in my previous class, we were discussing the topic adolescence, the changes in the life of a boy or a girl when from childhood you move on to the adolescent stage, and that is what I explained to you in my previous class. So we'll have a quick recap and then move on to adulthood. Adolescence, as we know, is the period or the teenage year where a lot of emotional changes, social changes, cognitive development, then we find hereditary change, development, etc. takes place in the life of a child. So in this stage, as we were discussing in our previous class, a child is growing towards adulthood, but society is still not accepting him as an adult. So this conflict which goes on within a child is a very traumatic experience because physical development takes place, emotional changes take place in the body of a child. We find that in this stage that the child, certain body proportions change, the size of the heart, lungs, sexual development takes place. In some children it is early maturation, while others it is late. Then cognition takes place, that is the cognition meaning that as the development of thinking and organizing systems of the brain, including language, mental imagery, thinking, reasoning, problem solving, memory development, reflexes, all these different changes take place. Sensory motor nerves, they start becoming more active. We notice that the child is able to understand more of language, symbols. Then the child starts accumulating these experiences and develops a memory. Then followed by this, we notice that many adolescents during the cognition development, they become very critical. That is, they start analyzing things. They start understanding by growing adolescent. Idealistic. Some of them become very rebellious because they have now got very firm ideas as what they should do and what they should not. So this cognition leads to many language development also. And many a times an adolescent might use a combination of languages like Hindi and English together. They become very self-conscious about their looks, have the ability to do things differently, start becoming more creative, and start improving their visual imaginary due to the growing cognition. And long-term values are established during this age. So that is why an adolescent must be taught the right values of life. Then social and emotional development. Emotional changes takes place mainly due to the change in the hormones in the body of an adolescent. So we find social interaction, like with family, the behavior changes of an adolescent, because the family starts expecting more from the child and they have to have certain aspirations. But many times the child may not be able to meet up to that. So proper motivation is needed, convincing answers to the different queries need to be put up. Then they are constantly under peer pressure because they prefer to listen to the friends of their age group who are also undergoing the same problems. And he spends a lot of time together with the members of the peer group, and they discuss art, music, family, sport, academics, global problems. And so what we find is that, so they start understanding, so adolescent looks up to the teacher for guidance because he spends a lot of time in school, and the teacher has to be a friend, guide, and philosopher. One set of parents at home is enough. The teacher should be an excellent role model. The members of the community too need to help the adolescent to grow up because he is making social adjustments. And it is preferable to live with grandparents at this age so that they can understand older people, be honest, helpful, considerate to family members. So what we find is that at times he goes through a period of stress also due to physical changes, sexual changes, educational and vocal changes, and he's trying to create an identity for himself and preparing himself for life and for the years to come. Then hereditary changes also occur. That is, we find that physical features, many due to the hereditary, that is, many a times certain diseases may crop up, hemophilia, hypertension, diabetes, all this also can crop up in an adolescent. So, adolescent is actually going through a problematic life, and he may suffer from anorexia nervosa, which is mainly seen among girls, that they become nervous, and what we find is that this will be serious problems: nervousness, depression, pleasure, loss of energy, moodiness. All these things are seen in an adolescent. Then moving on next, after the stage of an adolescent, we come to transition into adulthood, which is also a very important stage in the life of a person when he's moving on to becoming an adult. It is the period of life in a human being in which physical and intellectual maturity has been attained. And more or less begins from the age of 18 years and goes on to middle age, commencing at about 40 years, followed by old age at about 65 years. During transition, every time a person undergoes a major change in his life, like an adolescent, the move to adulthood is an exciting time and offers many opportunities and challenges. So, what we find is adult development refers to the changes that are biological, psychological, interpersonal domains of human life from the end of adolescence until end of life. These changes may be gradual or rapid and can reflect positive, negative, or no change from previous levels of functioning. It is difficult to determine precisely when adolescence begins and ends. When adulthood commences, there are some rough formal markers such as attaining the age to vote or becoming eligible to marry, but these markers vary according to society. Then there are criteria such as gaining financial autonomy, that is being financially independent, establishing a home. So all these changes take place in adulthood. Biologically, an adult may be defined as a human being who has reached maturity both mentally and physically. And adulthood is socially defined with expectations about appropriate behaviors and facing up to responsibilities. It is a stage of psychological and personal development, by which time it is assumed that individuals have established their identity as an independent, responsible, self-disciplined, and purposeful. In some societies, reaching adulthood is marked by a ritual ceremony also. An adult has to understand certain responsibilities, like for one's own self, then responsibility for others, social responsibility, that when you formulate your ideas, you take responsibility to do something about the things you feel strongly about, independence and freedom, growing, learning, consolidating, all these comes in adulthood. Then first and foremost, and the most important, making a career is a big thing to be done in adulthood. Because you'll find is that if you have made a wrong choice, then you'll be dissatisfied, frustrated, unhappy, boredom may set in. So there are certain factors which influence choosing a career. One, of course, is parents who try to influence the children. School, the type of educational experience one gets affect the choice of a career. Some school organize career education fair, workshops to guide an adolescent as what should be, how to shape his future, social expectations, personal traits. Different people have different abilities and aptitudes. For example, some jobs require traits like artistic, musical, or oration skills. Some vocations require good eye and hand coordination, concentration, creativity. Certain jobs require high mental abilities. Hence, the adolescent must look into their own abilities, aptitude, and interest. That adolescents are strongly affected by social expectation as the type of work a woman or men should do. Job opportunities. That is, being interested in a vocation does not mean that the job is available. So an adolescent needs to have more choices to be able to pick up alternative careers. Prestige. So it is common to find adolescents opting for vocations which will give them a certain prestige in life. One tends to be familiar and comfortable among people of the similar social strata, the kind of home you belong to, the occupation of parents, the norms. So in this manner, the transition takes place of an adolescent into an adult, where he becomes very responsible not only for himself or herself, but also for his family members and society. With this, we finish the topic, adolescent and adulthood.